And now you brought up the all ages aspect in the answer to the last question, and I know you mentioned it a lot in your interviews. You have a nice relationship with all ages venues. Now, does that go back to getting into the scene so young? Has it just kind of stuck with you?
Well, I mean, I think like for me in being into you, it was such a thing. Like with a lot of early bands that I would go see, like specifically this band Amenity, they always were like pushing the all ages thing, and like I remember like early on, like when I was still in high school, like 14, 15, 16, they always had these T-shirts that said all ages, and it was kind of like an ethical thing, but also like at the time, I mean, I don't even know that they needed to push like for this all ages thing, because it kind of really wasn't ever an option. Like bands that we were in or that we were into never really played venues that were 21 and up. It just never really happened. And so not until later on, like even like later on in the Locust, did we find ourselves like getting offered shows that were 21 and up that we wanted to play, but it just never really seemed to be like anything that we were concerned with. And then I think maybe it was like the fact that like some of the bands evolved and got bigger and like used booking agents and like started doing like things on another level, and then that in a sense would sometimes trickle down into like playing venues that were 21 and up. And the weird thing is like San Diego has like this super conservative vibe where like for some reason I think it's like pretty much only in Southern California, because if you go to Los Angeles it's totally different, where like there'll be a venue like the Troubadour, say, or like the Roxy or the Whiskey or something, where like it is all ages and there's a bar there. And so like it really was, that's not like a concern necessarily, where like in San Diego, like if you serve alcohol at a show, you're not allowed to be there unless you're over 21. And so I think it just kind of like stuck with us and stuck with me, because I don't know, it just seemed like there's a lot of younger people that miss out, and like I know, like, I essentially missed out on good stuff, I mean, I guess, I remember like when I was like 15 or whatever, like standing outside of this venue trying to see G.G. Allen play right before he died, and I just like had to peer through the front door, and not that a 15-year-old really needs to go see G.G. Allen, but I mean, it's stuff like that though, I know, like, I remember like when I was really young, I was like super into Samhain, and I remember like when Danzig first started, he came and played this place called The Spirit, and I couldn't see Danzig, and I mean, I'm not really a big fan of Danzig, but like I just knew like, oh, this is like the new Samhain band, I really want to see this, and I wasn't able to see it, and it was a drag at that time, and like now I could have cared less, or whatever, but so I think it was just something that I like picked up on and paid attention to.
Okay, now you put a lot of emphasis on your artwork and the packaging of your records for both the Locust, all the bands you've been in, and for the bands on your label, as well as stage theatrics during your shows. Does that stem from the idea that your projects are much more than just the music itself?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think first and foremost, I think that some of the projects, I guess, well, I'll just say like my current projects and some of my kind of current stuff that's not happening. Like, I mean, at some point I really started to focus on like, I think like kind of more quality control, I guess, like especially playing in the Locust, those guys, we all like kind of taught ourselves to like really kind of step it up and like make it like not kind of just like, oh, we wrote a song here, it's fine, like just, like kind of like reevaluate it and stuff. And I think essentially a lot of people should do that, but I think like a lot of people would, like, I've seen records that just look so insane, like the packaging is so awesome, but like the music is really dismal, and like I'm like, who the hell like can afford to do this and like put out this record or whatever? But I mean, granted, it's my opinion on someone's art, and it doesn't like have any value necessarily, but at the same time, for myself and being like my own like worst critic or best critic, however you want to look at it, I would always think like, okay, as long as the music's fine, or like passes my standard or whatever, like let's look at the artwork as like an extension of like the whole overall like thing, because I mean, coming from like a time where like there wasn't such thing as like digital downloads, like you really did have to like focus on aesthetic, and I think subconsciously, like I really was influenced by like the whole aesthetic of Gravity. I mean, when I was younger, like I was really good friends with Matt, and I would see him silkscreening paper bags for 7-inch covers and like for the store T-shirts and stuff like that. And I think like essentially I was like, well, this is kind of crazy, because you can like kind of like be poor and like use that like disadvantage as an advantage to be more creative. And then so, I mean, I think like it somehow at some point that resonated with me, and I was like, okay, not that I had to like sustain like doing things like on like a thrift store level, but like what I would think is like, okay, there's got to be a method to like doing something different, and I guess that was like where I drew that from.
Now I got to bring up 31G Records. Is it even viable nowadays to maintain an independent label with all the blog spots and the torrent sites and the free downloads and everyone wanting everything for free?
Well, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I think like a lot of people like get that and take it, but it is not financially viable, not at all. And I think it's another thing that's like forcing people to be like a bit more creative, especially I think since vinyl is still like the kind of only lucrative method of like actually putting out a physical product. I think it's going back to that element of like, let's put out something that's like a bit more creative and it's a little bit more desirable, where people are going to actually want this physical piece of art or whatever, and like so I don't know. I mean, at this point it's hard to tell, because like with 31G, it's like, I mean, we're still sustaining ourselves barely, but like, I mean, it's kind of like forced us to try to like figure out another way. As well as like every other record label, and even all the way up to the majors. I think everyone's kind of sweating it right now. And like, I mean, I felt it even dealing with other labels with the Locust and stuff. It's just like like the financial element of it is rough now, and I understand all the different arguments. Like, okay, I think that there's that whole like sort of like anarchist like perspective, like music should be free and major labels shouldn't, like you shouldn't have to pay like X amount of dollars for these things, and at the same time it's like, well, I mean, someone like has to sit down and create that stuff, and not only do they have to have a rehearsal space, but they have to be able to afford equipment, and then on top of that, they have to be able to, to record it. And then once it gets online, it's free. It's like, well, that's rad for people to be able to give it away for free, but like, I don't come from money. I can't just like spend my life writing shit and like making stuff for free necessarily. I mean, I think essentially I do, because I work other jobs. I work like to like pay my bills and stuff, and then I ruin my life playing music. So it's like I don't want to say like ruin as like kind of a joke or whatever, but I mean I think it's just a hard like
dichotomy.
Well, yeah, but it's so huge. It's like, well, there are pros and cons of how things are going with the industry, and like honestly, it's kind of just weird. I'll just say it's really weird right now. I don't really know what to make of it. So
yeah. And then on a side note, who's in charge of the artwork behind the websites and the MySpace pages? That work is fucking just brilliant, beautiful, aesthetic-wise.
A lot of most of the 31G stuff and some of the Locust, like the website and MySpace, is all done by this guy Mike McGuire, he's like the third part of 31G. There's three of us on the label, and so that's all him doing that stuff.
Okay, big props to him, man.